I'm hoping other people's summers went that way, because if not, that makes me sound like incredibly lonely. Summer, clouds in the sky in summer, and it gives off Beyonce vibes, to be honest. And then they tell you a joke, and all of a sudden you're like, something is happening here. Hello there, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Priyanka, or PM in writing or on stage, because I am a spoken word poet, aspiring author, and bookish content creator on here, and Book Talk, and Bookstagram. So if you haven't already checked me out there, then please do. Firstly, yes, I did get new glasses, thank you for noticing. So the sun is shining aggressively in my face, which can only mean one thing: it is summer. And more importantly, as we have seen a lot online, it is hot girl summer. I don't care if you're single or not, it is hot girl summer for everyone. However, I identify as genderqueer, which basically means I use she and they them pronouns, but also it means that I don't completely identify with the idea of being a woman. I think this TikTok represents it best.
I use she, they pronouns because gender's fake and I'm not really a woman, but I was raised a woman and I'll always be perceived as a woman, and I don't have gender dysphoria or any body dysmorphia when it comes to my parts or gender, but I'm not a girl.
And I was like, you know what? I've not seen like a gender neutral version of hot girl summer, so it is time for hot person summer. And of course, with everything in my life, I have to bring poetry into it somehow. So we are combining poetry books with hot person summer. And I'll be recommending you 10 poetry books that I feel like will complete your hot person summer. And I thought the easiest way to do that would be to split the video into 3 sections. So we have hot, person, and summer. So in those sections, I will be giving you 3 books aside from person that I feel like represent that theme of being hot, being a person, specifically a gender neutral person, and also summer. So without further ado, let's jump into the video and let's start with the hot books. So the first hot book that I have, or hot poetry book, is Bless the Daughter Raised by a Voice in Her Head by 𝒑𝒆𝒓𝒔𝒐𝒏. Now, I'm starting off with this because I don't know how to explain it, but it just gives off hot person energy, like so confident, so like, fuck you, I don't care about what you have to say. And I feel like that cover particularly as well gives off hot person energy. Does this not say I am a confident brown woman and I don't care about you? I think it's also because in the collection you can tell that like 𝒑𝒆𝒔𝒐𝒏 is really writing from the heart and being like unapologetically herself. And I spoke about this a little bit in my previous video, but she also uses a glossary for all the Somali terms that she includes in the collection. And I feel like that really gives off the vibe that she is confident in the messages that she is sending through this collection to the reader, whether or not they're English speaking, whether it's about her being a refugee or being a black woman and inhabiting a black woman's body. Maybe it's also because 𝒑𝒆𝒔𝒐𝒏 wrote Lemonade, or not wrote, obviously not, co-wrote some of the poetry in Lemonade, so I always just associate this collection mentally with Beyonce, and it gives off Beyonce vibes, to be honest. Next is a collection which, because of the blinding sun, ironically, I don't think you can see the cover, I'll put a little picture or something on the side, is This House by 𝒑𝒏𝒏, which is a little pamphlet from the Emma Press. This house is mostly comprised of quite short staccato poems, which I think gives off like the same kind of self-assuredness that Bless the Daughter has. But also there's elements of exploring different relationships and like toxic exes, and also saying fuck you to those exes, which really highlights like the hot person energy that is radiating from this very small collection. And it's also quite interesting because 𝒑𝒏𝒏 in this collection has a poem that is quite meta, where she's writing about herself, writing about those relationships. And I think that in itself is quite cool and quite hot person energy, if I have to say so myself. Because realistically, being hot is just being confident. And I think when your poems are a lot more confessional, it takes a lot more confidence to kind of show those parts of yourself publicly, even if it is like written down. So next up is a book that I am very excited to talk about, which is Bargain Bin Rom-Com by Lena Norms. And if you know me, you know that I absolutely adore Lena Norms and think she is just a wonderful person. And actually, I had the chance to go to her book launch for this collection, and she is just a lovely person. However, what I want to try and do is give you an explanation of this collection that is detached from her YouTube personality and also my love of her and her channel. So Bargain Bin Rom-Com has hot person energy in a completely different way than the other two collections, I think, because hello, what is hotter than a rom-com? And just like a rom-com, this collection is funny in a hot way, right? Because realistically, you can meet like the most unattractive person, they have a million red flags, and then they tell you a joke, and all of a sudden you're like, something is happening here. Most of these poems rhyme or have like a really lovely sense of rhythm to them, and I am not a huge fan of rhyming poetry. However, these poems, right, like usually the reason I'm not a fan is because when I read rhyming poetry, I kind of cringe a little bit because I'm a bit like, it's a bit too much for me. But I didn't cringe reading these poems at all because they were genuinely really heartfelt and in some cases funny. This collection explores stuff like capitalism and also telling capitalism to piss off, which is amazing. If that's not hot, I don't know what is. Love, of course, in its many forms, like the idea of texting back and love languages, which is always lovely. And basically, it is an extremely accessible, funny, wonderful collection that gives off funny, hot energy. Now we're moving on to the person section, and first up is this lovely little lilac book, which is Human Men by Louis 𝒑𝒆𝒏. So this collection was originally written as a response to Louis' experience online dating as a gay man, but it expands into looking at the idea of what it actually means to be a man, and also turns into a tribute to Louis' mum, who unfortunately passed away. And what I found really interesting about this collection was reading it from the perspective of someone who doesn't identify as male at all. And so because of that, I found it really insightful almost. And also, this is just like a little side note, but I know Louis through Instagram, and actually he self-published this collection, but like the paper quality, let me put this next to the microphone, is really thick and like very nice to feel. Like, I don't know, that's just a side note, but I really enjoy when books are like really nicely made, and as a self-published book I just had to commend that. And so obviously, because it looks at the idea of masculinity, it also expands into the idea of what it means to be a human, hence human man. It's all coming together. And like I said, I know Louis through Instagram, so do check out his Instagram and TikTok, which I will leave links to in the description, because he is just like a genuinely lovely person. Okay, so next is this book, which is 100 Queer Poems, which is actually a Penguin Random House title. And so because of that, I had to write a little bit of copy about it for our international newsletter. And I wrote something along the lines of like, 1 queer poem? Why not have 100 instead? And as cringe and corporate as that sounds, that is basically this collection. So the collection is split into different elements of what it means to be a queer person. Let me read them all. So we have queer childhood / adolescence, queer domesticities, queer relationships, queer landscapes, queering the city, queering histories, and queer futures. as well as two really heartfelt forewords from the editors of this collection, which are Mary Jean Chan and Andrew McMillan. And truly, I feel like the way they have split this collection and tried to bring out certain poets, they have quite literally covered every single ground of what it means to be like a queer person and a person in general. Right, so the best way to talk about how much I love this collection would be to roll the clip from my previous video. So,
I fucking love this so much, and I cannot tell you anything else. When you get so enthusiastic about poetry, you need to read this. Look, why did I just hit myself in the face if not to convince you to read this book?
So this collection is All the Flowers Kneeling by Paul Tran. And the reason I put this in the person section is because this collection is essentially all about transforming as a person, about the transformation of yourself through trauma and pain, whether it's intergenerational trauma that comes from being like a first or second generation immigrant, or being a queer person, and in Paul Tran's case, being a trans person as well. And also just the pain of existing as someone who doesn't like themselves and is confused about how to navigate the world. And so the collection then also ends up being about how this trauma can be transformational, in the sense that you then become confident and you turn into a person who can like gracefully kind of let it go, and but also carry it with you. So for the final book of the person category, we have After Effects by G.A. Lee. So compared to the other books, this one is tiny, but it really does pack a punch. And I actually did a full review of this collection if you are interested as well. And I think quite similarly to Paul Tran, this pamphlet has a lot of poems about trauma in them, but figures out a way to kind of make it graceful. And specifically, the trauma here is G.A.'s father passing away. And whenever anyone asks me for a poetry book recommendation, I always recommend G.A.'s pamphlet, because G.A.'s poems are so emotive, but like so accessible, and you do get moments of humor in there as well. Like I mentioned in my review, there's a poem about G.A. visiting India with her then partner, who was Indian, about going to the Taj Mahal, and it was genuinely so funny. I was reading this on the train and like laughed out loud. And so I put this in the person category because it feels like a really well-rounded examination of trauma and how to live with grief, but then also it feels like a balanced examination because of that, of what it means to be a person who carries these things with them, but also just a person in general, because of all the different elements that G.A. brings into this. So now the category that is the most relevant, because as I said, the sun is blinding me today, summer. So if you are new to this channel and new to me, you might not know how much I adore Phil K, but I absolutely adore Phil K, if you couldn't get that already. Like, I will never stop talking about how much I love Phil K, and specifically this collection, which is Date and Time. Anyways, Date and Time is in the summer category because it feels like the kind of collection that you'd read like when you've just got out of school and it's summer holidays and you're sitting in front of a fan with like a bowl of like half melted ice cream next to you, and you're just chilling and like flicking through it on your bed, you know, by yourself. I'm hoping other people's summers went that way, because if not, that makes me sound like incredibly lonely. I did stuff in summer too, I promise, aside from reading. But the reason I love Phil K so much is because his kind of poetry is always what I strive to emulate in my own work, because it's so accessible, and if you have never read poetry before, you can very easily pick up Date and Time and still understand or feel something from the poems. And the reason I kind of had that image of sitting in your room and reading the collection is because it's split into 3 sections, which are beginning, middle, and end. And in the beginning section, as you can imagine, there's lots of poems about childhood, but even in the middle and end sections, you get a lot of nostalgic poems about growing old, or your relationship with your grandparents, or your relationship with your computer even, which is one of my favorite poems by Phil K. And all his poems are imbued with this sense of like bittersweetness and nostalgia, which is something that I feel like you only feel at the beginning and the end of summer. So some of you might be like, oh, this is a really obvious pick, and it's 10 poems about clouds. Summer, clouds, clouds in the sky in summer, poems about clouds. Done. No, I'm kidding, I'll explain. So I think it is really nice to read poems that are centered around a particular theme, or in this case, a thing which is clouds. Because I think one of the beautiful things about poetry is it can get you to look at things in a completely different way and capture the essence of something without actually saying what that thing is. So for example, a cloud might be described as like a ball of cotton, but you're never gonna actually use the word cloud. And then the next time you look at a cloud, you're like, oh, it is like looking like a big ball of cotton. And in summer, you're probably gonna go outside. You might be seeing them right now even. I don't know what you're doing with your life. You're probably gonna be seeing a lot more clouds. So this would be a lovely way to get you in like the summer mood of like cloud watching and having a really nice time, and maybe rethinking how you look at something that you're gonna be seeing every day. So the last book on this list, and also in the summer category, is How the Sparks Became Visible by Simone Atagana-Bakono. So this was originally written in Dutch and then translated into English, and then republished by the Emma Press. And similar to a lot of collections that I've shown today, it is very small, but very raw. It's made up of a few poems marked by Roman numerals, but when you read it together, it feels like one really long epic poem. And I feel like the reason this pamphlet had summer vibes or like summer energy to it is because the writer uses a lot of natural imagery and the idea of like a forest, and in some cases like Greek mythology as well, to explore the idea of how she exists as a black woman in relation to being part of Western society in like an extremely visceral way. And for me at least, summer has always felt like a time of exploration, of feeling like I don't need to be cooped up indoors, I can go out and be in nature and, you know, be part of things that are happening and like find my spark. In other words, summer has always felt like a giant epic poem. And in case you don't know what an epic poem is, I will leave a little bit of information in the description, but essentially it has felt like an epic poem with loads of ups and downs and journey, but ultimately bringing me back to home, back to the start of my journey, back to my body, who I am as a queer person, and you know, just vibing in this hot person energy. So thank you so much for watching to the end if you did. If you did watch to the end, please leave a little summer emoji in the comments. Put your favorite summer emoji actually. Is it the sun? Is it the flower? Is it the tree? What do you think about when you think of summer? I am planning to post one video every 2 weeks now for the foreseeable future. So if you haven't subscribed already yet, please do. Hit the like button, leave a comment, all that good stuff, and I will see you back here for the next video in 2 weeks. Goodbye.